Hey everybody, this is Ben Kruse coming to you guys from Hitting for the Cycle. I'm riding here solo on this show today on episode 76, but I do have a very special guest that is going to be coming on momentarily. But before we obviously get started, make sure to follow us everywhere you guys may be getting your platforms here on Hitting for the Cycle, right down on the ticket bar down below at HFTC ETB, on the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network. Make sure to subscribe to us on the Empty the Bench podcast network on YouTube. Also follow Ryan Touhey, my co-host, R2E97. Also follow me on X at Ben Kruse 144. Also to follow us on Hitting for the Cycle at HFTC ETB. Also to follow us on YouTube /ETB Network, where you guys can, of course, find our episodes. If you guys are on the go, make sure to listen to us on Hitting for the Cycle, wherever you guys may get your podcasts. And of course, this episode today is sponsored by our good friends over at Playback. Stay tuned for more throughout the program. All right, so like I said, folks, Ryan, my co-host, who typically is on every single week, is not here. So unfortunately, we don't have him, but we do have a very special guest with us today. And that is Gabby Malijanian, who is she works for the Locked On Red Sox podcast network. She's also been a host on the Boston Balling podcast, and she's a former ESPN social media host. So, Gabby, we want to thank you for coming on to be our first guest in terms of our debut of Hitting for the Cycle, which, of course, we had started from last week. And I know, Gabby, you said you're flattered to come on and to be your first ever guest, but we can't thank you enough for having you come on for this episode today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Definitely have to set the bar high here for future guests that you do have. But yeah, definitely a pleasure to be here. Always happy to talk about the Red Sox, especially right now.
Yeah, so I mean, typically, in terms of most of our episodes, we go through a lot of just different type of baseball news and kind of different stuff kind of around the league. But since we actually have you on here, and Gabby is also not only a guest we're going to have on here, but she's also a Red Sox fan like me, we're going to pretty much do, in terms of our interview with her, do a lot of stuff with the Red Sox and kind of go through some of the deeps ins and outs. But before we get started with kind of the overall Red Sox team, Gabby, I just want you to kind of tell me a little bit more about how you got yourself with the Locked On podcast network for the Red Sox. So how do you get involved, and where can first-time listeners find your work?
Yeah, sure. So it all kind of stemmed from my experience with starting in the podcasting space. So I launched the Boston Balling podcast back in 2020, actually during COVID, because I wanted an outlet to talk about Boston sports, because I had been guests on other people's podcasts before. And I was like, wow, that was kind of fun. I kind of want my own platform to be able to do that. So I launched the Boston Balling podcast, kind of was talking about all things Boston sports, was getting a bunch of big guests on in the Boston sports community. And then in 2023, the Locked On Podcast Network had an opening for a Red Sox host. And so they really were impressed by the following that I had grown on Boston Balling. So they ended up hiring me to do that. So I've been doing it ever since. Can't believe it's been 2 years already, which is crazy. But it's a Monday through Friday Red Sox podcast, basically just talking about everything going on with the team, whether that's, analyzing games that took place or bringing on guests or just kind of talking about biggest topics in Red Sox news. So if you have never listened to Locked On Red Sox before, you can find it on YouTube or any other podcast platform. You can also follow the show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. And it's a lot of fun. I've, talked to a lot of different people. I've gotten some players on, coaches, other media personnel. So I definitely try to mix up some of the people that I'm talking to try to keep people informed. So you can tune into that on any podcast platform Monday through Friday.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've gotten the chance to see a lot of your podcasts, whether I'm at work or just kind of on the go. And it's awesome to see just from, different Red Sox fans, not only just Red Sox fans, but kind of just other fans that kind of tune in and just podcasting in general, I think is just awesome platform. So not only you're one of our first guests now to come on, but you're just also somebody in the podcasting field. So I think it's really cool to have that. So yeah, very welcoming to have you on here. And it's awesome to kind of tell you about your work for us. So obviously, Gabby, the Red Sox are back. Of course, we were coming off of the All-Star break, and I think that those 2 days are pretty much like, yeah, I'm just kind of looking for something to watch. I mean, I've been watching Summer League with my time, and Summer League is something I just can't watch for another like 3 or 4 more days. I just need baseball back in my life. So it's great to have you on. And the day of recording, the Red Sox are back. And not only that they're back, but they're currently riding high on a 10-game winning streak heading from into the break. And so after a crazy inconsistent first couple of months of the season, Gabby, which we kind of saw for this overall team, with that 10-game winning streak, what do you think exactly changed with this overall team? I know, of course, people want to say, well, they played the Reds and they played the Rockies and they played a lot of just very awful and mediocre type of teams. But 10-game winning streak is a 10-game winning streak. I mean, it's really hard in baseball to kind of just have at least a 3 to 5 game winning streak, let alone 10. So how do you feel like specifically this 10-game winning streak kind of transpired before the break? And do you think kind of that the Red Sox can kind of continue this overall stretch, or do you think that just as of right now that they're just playing their best baseball at the right time?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, the teams they've played, like the Nationals and the Rockies, but not a lot of teams have really swept the Rockies consistently. So there's that. Like you said, it's really hard to go on a 10-game winning streak in baseball. And this was something that the Red Sox really needed because they were really struggling all season long to find some consistency. So they definitely needed to get some momentum going. And sweeping a 4-game series against the Rays, I don't think people realize how difficult that is in itself. I did not expect that. I was expecting us to split the series with them. I was like, I'll be satisfied with a split. Anything else is just a bonus. Right. And sure enough, they just rattled off all 4 wins, which was great. And, I think we can point to a couple things. One of the biggest things that I'm looking at is the success that we've seen as of late from Lucas Giolito and Brian Bayo on the mound. I think those two in particular are of note because both of them struggled early on when they came back from their respective injuries. And then ever since the last month or so, both of them have really turned things around in terms of being able to provide length on the mound and being a lot more productive in their outings. And that's been a big thing for the bullpen, allowing the bullpen to be able to not have to be used as early in games. And that's something that I think could help them moving forward with the momentum aspect is if those two continue to pitch the way that they're pitching, this Red Sox team will continue to win games. And I think that's been a big surprise for me, especially Lucas Giolito. I did not think he was going to pitch it this well. So that's going to be a key factor for me moving forward is how well do those two pitch as the season progresses. And also, something that I think might be hard for people to admit is that the Rafael Devers trade might have actually been something that needed to happen. And I know it was a tough pill for fans to swallow at first, like myself included. It was sad having to move on from him. But in a way, it almost feels like maybe a blessing in disguise that maybe some of the reports that were coming out about Devers and the vibes in the clubhouse could have been true to an extent. Obviously, you hear report after report and some of it might not be completely accurate, but they look like they're having the most fun that they've had all season long. And obviously that's a result of the consistent winning that they've been doing over the last 10 games. But now from a lineup standpoint, it really allows Alex Cora to be able to maximize the lineup that he has in front of him and keep the young players consistently in games. Because prior to the Devers trade, the conversation was, well, one of those guys might have to be sent down when Alex Bregman comes back. And you look at the way Marcelo Meyer has been playing, especially defensively, and it was hard to justify sending him down. Roman Anthony obviously is playing well, so you don't want to send him down either. And by trading Devers, they, for one, cleared some money off the board. I don't think that was the reason for the trade, but that allows them to use that money on other areas of the roster that they can hopefully fill out at the trade deadline and beyond. But it also really allows for the development of those young players. And I think by trading him, the Red Sox sent a message of it's not okay with us for you to just say, I'm not going to do this if we need you to do something that's best for the team. So I think from a team chemistry standpoint, that really changed after the Devers trade. And I do think that is also a big reason why they've been able to find this recent success that they've been having.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, we obviously, with Rafael Devers, I think we both admit that the Red Sox are a better offensive team with Rafael Devers. However, the one thing that Rafael Devers really just never showed in terms of his overall tenure with the team was his leadership. And of course, not all great overall players just have that quality. It's either you have it or you don't. And I would think that's one reason why I think that the front office brought in Alex Bregman is because not only he is a great offensive overall threat, but he's just a great overall leader. And you're seeing a lot of these young kids that have a lot of promise. Bregman's pretty much the guy that they're pretty much going to and pretty much just kind of showing the ropes because he's had that experience in the past. And I think that as of right now, I mean, we talk about the 10-game winning streak, Gabby, but Bregman and Yoshida they came back just recent. Like they pretty much were doing this before these guys came back. So I feel like it's even more impressive that, yes, of course you didn't play great teams, but you had a lot of these younger kids, including guys like Sadon, really just kind of take that next level. And I just think that it's so contagious when these young kids are starting to kind of figure it out because we knew it was going to kind of come. It was just kind of the matter of when. And I think that now with kind of the tougher teams, which I'm going to talk about momentarily, that we have starting today coming up, I think that it's a pretty good thing to have because, as you see, of course, in baseball, I mean, winning's winning. And Sadon said after that walkout he had the other night, I mean, I just want to win and I want to get posted in baseball back in October. And I think our fans want it too.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's hungry for October baseball at Fenway, myself included. And you bring up a really good point about the young players. I mean, the strides that Rafaela has taken this year have been truly tremendous. And people were really hard on him last year. And I said, let's give the kid some time. You know, he was a rookie. He really didn't put up as bad of numbers as people were making it out to be. So I said, let's just have patience with him. I mean, he's athletic. He obviously plays tremendous defense. And so there's a lot he has to offer. If he can just unlock another gear offensively, then this kid could be really special. And sure enough, he's really shown a lot of growth at the plate this year, showing a lot more plate discipline and a lot more patience, I would say, than he did last year. He still definitely has his tendencies of being a little too swing happy in some situations, but I would say he's cut down on that a lot this year relative to last year, and it's leading to less strikeouts by him and more quality contact. And I really like that from him. Carlos Narvaez, I would say, has also been a big surprise this year as somebody that, you know, people were not expecting to do what he's doing at the plate because he came in known for his behind the plate skills and not so much his offensive skills, but his offense has been really good too. And it's definitely been tough to see Connor Wong struggle in the way that he has. But the way that that's been made up by Narvaez, clearly identifying himself as that number one catcher, has been a great situation for the Red Sox. I do think they do have to figure out the Connor Wong situation at some point. But the way that Narvaez has been playing, this kid's been special for this team. And when I'm looking at surprises for this Red Sox team right now, he's definitely got to be somebody who's towards the top of that list.
It's so funny that you talk about surprises because my next question for you is, what is your overall takeaways from this first half of the season? And we're actually going to go into some superlatives in terms of, you know, team MVP, best pitcher, best offensive player. So you pretty much already got the surprise already done. But as of right now, of course, the Red Sox are coming off a 10-game winning streak. Currently, they're right now in third place in the division, which is crazy to think after what it could have been a couple weeks ago. So they're pretty much right in the thick of it. They're right now in the second wild card. Yep, they're the second wild card, and they're 2 or 3 games back out of first place. So I know I kind of already asked you already kind of a little bit. Of course, they're kind of inconsistent for the first couple months. but then they, of course, ride high right at the end. So it's kind of a similar way of how they actually did from last year in the first half. If you remember, of course, they were riding high right into the All-Star break. So I think that's why a lot of our fans are kind of hesitant about this stretch of like, oh, here we go again. Like, let's not have this happen again.
No,
So,
so true.
so, but as of right now in this first half, right? What are some of your takeaways from it? In terms of like a guy like Carlos Narvaez, right? Of course, being a massive surprise, but what was your kind of overall really quick takeaways before getting into some superlatives?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely the season started out not as well as I thought it would. I went into this season very excited about this team because of the moves that they made in the offseason to acquire guys like Garrett Crochet and Alex Bregman. And I said, I feel like this is going to be a better team than it was last year. And on paper, it should have been a better team, but there were still question marks surrounding the pitching. And I said, a lot of things have to go right for the pitching staff in order for this team to succeed. And in the first couple months of the season, things weren't exactly going right for the pitching staff. And sure enough, this team was struggling. And I definitely feel like I've been a little bit disappointed in Walker Buehler. That would be one of my biggest takeaways from the first half, as I was hoping that he was going to be a little bit more consistent in this rotation. So that's somebody who I was expecting more from that hasn't necessarily performed at the level I would have wanted him to perform at. I would say how much Tanner Houck was struggling before he got hurt was also a big surprise, because that's a huge regression from what we've seen from him in the past. The first half of the season last year, he was great. He was even in Cy Young conversations in the first half. And then we did see a dip in numbers from him in the second half of the season last year. And I said, hopefully he can turn that around and get back to what we saw in the first half. So if he came into this season with a little bit of a dip, I wouldn't necessarily have been that surprised, because we did see that from him in the second half last year. But I think it was the dramatic jump in his productivity at the beginning of this season. So I'm looking for him to come back healthy and hopefully be able to contribute a lot more in the second half, be able to be consistent on the mound and not look completely lost out there. So that's another big thing I would say from the first half that is a takeaway for me. Garrett Crochet, of note, for sure, has just been everything that the Red Sox have needed and more. And I know some people, I would say, had an issue with what the Red Sox had to give up to get him, but I would say it was so worth it, because they needed an ace. This rotation needed an ace, and that really changes things, because the Red Sox finally have a starting pitcher where we can go out there, and if it's a Crochet day, we know we can feel pretty confident in what he's going to give you and the Red Sox chances of winning that game. And that is something that we haven't been able to say in a long time, and that feels really good. So that's another big highlight for me. And I would also say Aroldis Chapman and how effective he's really been, because when the Red Sox brought him in, I said, okay, this is a veteran with a lot of experience closing, playing in the setup role. Where are the Red Sox exactly going to put him? Then they said he was primarily going to close games. And I said, that could go well, could go decent. Did I think he was going to have one of the best seasons of his career? Absolutely not. And if you really think about how effective he's been, I would not have wanted anybody else to be closing games that are in this Red Sox bullpen right now, because I know they talked about experimenting with other guys being in that role. But the way that he has been, he will give the Red Sox a chance too in the playoffs if you have Chapman out there closing games. So that's another big thing. I think the combination of veterans and youngsters took some time for the Red Sox to really get used to and acclimate. And the leadership of Alex Bregman obviously has been a game changer for some of the young players on this team. So I think the way the roster was constructed with that mix of veterans and young talent who are just beginning their careers, I think that's something that the Red Sox really needed to get used to, which could have caused some of the early season struggles as well. But there's a lot of things to be excited about going into the second half. Obviously, still some question marks, but I really like where this team is at as of right now. It seems like they've really started to figure out a lot of the problems they were having earlier on.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I just think that we just seen a couple guys as of right now really kind of blossom. I mean, who would have thought Aroldis Chapman would turn into Cincinnati Reds Aroldis Chapman on the Red Sox?
Literally.
I mean, I think that I saw his walk, his baseball savant yesterday. His walk percentage has been unreal, and that's one thing that a lot of teams were hesitant about was his walk rate. The last couple of years, his command was not great, and but the biggest thing about Craig Breslow, I think, in this offseason was he was trying to address guys with swing and miss stuff. I mean, you look at even in the Rafael Devers trade just recently, they got Jordan Hicks. And Jordan Hicks is, of course, the guy that has the swing and miss ability stuff. So I think there's kind of a trend as of right now in which Craig wants to go out and address the starting pitching needs because, like we talked about with the ace and Garrett Crochet, and of course, that right now, when it comes to superlatives, that is my team MVP, is Garrett Crochet. Because we needed that ace for, I don't know how many years, Gabby, we've been asking about. We just needed that ace. We needed that ace. And we kind of looked at the second half of the last couple of years, the pitching staff just hasn't been able to withstand with the pitching elements of guys like Cutter Crawford and Tanner Houck. And Crochet is kind of like the Chris Sale of old. He really is because, like, remember Chris Sale? It's like, well, you know for a fact we're going to get production-wise out of this guy. And Crochet, Crochet, we asked him, of course, to be the ace, but I did not ask him to be in the Tarek Skubal of, like, best pitcher race, which I think has just been the absolute bonus. Now, I do think, of course, there's going to be a little bit of regression in the second half with Crochet. So if people are going to start to freak out, don't be surprised about it, but he's still going to be fine because a lot of his bad games are good games for a lot of good pitchers, which is crazy to think. I know, of course, he gave up. I remember the game against the Reds, right, where the Red Sox put up like 7 runs in the first inning. Of course, he's never had the run support. And then, of course, he just like, I don't know what to do with my hands type of thing and gave up like 5 runs after the next couple of innings after. I think it's because, he looked at it and be like, wow. And, of course, against the Rays, with that complete game shuttle he had on Saturday, it was a 1-0 game. So it's like when the games get tight, the guy specifically is just a bulldog. And we have not had that for so long. So that's why he's my team MVP because he's a guy, at least to me, because we had a lot of times around this first half of the season, which the Red Sox went on massive losing streaks. And we're like, we need to have a stopper. And we never had that in the last couple of years. And Crochet is easily that guy this year.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree with that more. I think when it comes to Garrett Crochet, going into the season, there were some hesitations because of, injuries and things like that, and people being unsure as to whether he was actually going to pitch to that ace caliber level that the Red Sox really needed him to pitch at. But he has far surpassed any expectations I had for him going into the season. He is a guy that you can roll out there for game 1 of a playoff series against anybody. And I would really feel confident in Crochet's ability to stack up against, even the best lineups in baseball. And I don't think that's something that Red Sox fans have been able to say for a while. And you look at some of the offensive guys and you can make arguments for some of the offensive guys in terms of a team MVP, but I think it really comes down to the fact that pitching has been their glaring weakness over the last few seasons. And that was something that prevented them the most from making the playoffs because we saw them hit. We know that this team can hit. Even in the last few years, they were hitting. And their offensive numbers as a team overall were not as much of a concern as you would think it would have been because of the record that they had. But a lot of that had to do with the pitching. And you needed that number 1 guy at the top. And you're absolutely getting that in Garrett Crochet this year. So I agree with you. The Red Sox are winning games because of Crochet. So to me, he has been the most valuable in the first half.
Okay, so in terms of best pitcher, of course I could say Crochet as well too, but I'm gonna actually go on somebody else. I'm gonna go with Brian Bayo as my best pitcher. And it's not because specific, I think he's been the best pitcher just as a massive whole, but I think he's exactly what the team has needed after Crochet because you could say, well, Crochet is the best pitcher, but we kind of already know that because he's an ace. Brian Bayo specifically, if you can get the Brian Bayo, what you have from a couple of years ago, it just helps the rotation out so much. And, people are telling me, well, he had the complete game shut against the Rockies. And, of course, he had the good game against Tampa. I think he's had about a 2-month stretch right now. And people want to say, well, why has Connor Juan not been off the team yet? Well, Connor Juan is his personal catcher. So Connor Juan specifically, unfortunately, folks, is one of the biggest reasons why Brian Bayo is kind of going back to what he's been. So if that's the case with Connor Wong doing it, I'll take that. But I'm going to go with Brian Bayo. I think that's kind of one that people I feel like aren't going to really agree with, but I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because everybody cries when they see Connor Wong's name in the lineup. But yeah, you want to have that comfortability with the pitcher, and the pitcher is not going to be able to find as much success if they don't have their guy catching for them that they feel comfortable with. And you don't want to see Brian Bayo regress because you're taking Connor Wong out on days where he's pitching. So like you said, Brian Bayo wants him out there, so it's going to happen when he's pitching. And I really like what I've seen from Brian Bayo as of late. I think we knew there was potential there, and we've seen glimpses in the past of what Brian Bayo could do, but I felt like he hadn't really been able to put it all together yet. He's not a huge strikeout pitcher, and that was something that was holding him back a lot in the past, but he's been able to really develop his game a lot over the last few years. And what we've seen from him over the last couple months has been really great to see. And I think, when you look at Bayo and where he's going, is this going to continue? I would say is a big question going into the second half. Is he going to continue to be that consistent and that dominant on the mound, or is he going to run into some struggles in the second half? I hope obviously it's the former and that this continues because this is a fun stretch that he's on. And I feel like this version of Brian Bayo that we've seen over the last couple months is the version that the Red Sox always pictured that he would get to, and he just hadn't quite gotten there. So I really like what we're seeing from him. Definitely a good answer. When you look at best pitcher, it's hard not to put Chapman in that conversation too, just because of how dominant he's truly been in his role. And I think it really goes to show what difference it can make when you truly have a reliable closer out there. And no disrespect to Kenley Jansen, but it was always a roller coaster when he was out there. Whereas with Chapman, you kind of trust that he's going to get the job done when he's out there. And that's a really good feeling. Even if he walks somebody in the inning, I still don't really find myself getting super nervous because I'm like, he's throwing 100. He'll be fine. He'll still finish this inning and take us to the promised land here. So I think that really reminds people of how much of a difference it makes to have a true closer out there. And this is somebody who, is likely going to be a Hall of Fame closer when it's all said and done. And that feels fantastic to have somebody like that out there. So I would say I have to throw him in that conversation just because he's been so incredibly effective, more so than you could even say anybody else. So I definitely like Chapman in that conversation.
Okay, so best offensive player, I would say Alex Bregman, but I think that's kind of like Crochet with a best pitcher. Like, I want to kind of be like a little bold. So for me, on my first half, I'm actually going to go with Willie Abreu. Willie Abreu, I thought, had a pretty good first half. I know that, of course, he got hurt and he kind of had a little bit of stretch where he had a little kind of a downplay. But a lot of people don't really give Willie, I think, the credit that he deserves. But he plays a really good right field, which I think is one of the toughest positions to play at Fenway. And he sprays the ball to every part of the park, which I think is awesome to see. I was actually at the walk-off Willier hit against the Cardinals early on the season. I'm just like, maybe like, because I'm just been asking for the Willie Abreu breakout. I've been a massive fan of him. I'm also a lefty hitter, so maybe that's also part of it. But yeah, no, I just think that he's just an energy type of guy, and it just would really hurt like if he was happened to be like in a trade talk, because I think that he's not like the younger part of like the big three, but he's also like not the older part. He's just kind of like the middle. And I think that he just kind of fits the overall type of system. And I just can't forget, of course, too, the inside the Parker and the Grand Slam game. I mean, you just can't put that, and kind of what he does is what he's doing. So I'm going to go with Willie as my best offensive player in the first half, kind of outside of Bregman.
Yeah, the Willie Abreu situation is definitely interesting because, like, he was somebody that we knew had the potential, especially after the rookie season that he had. And his defense was definitely there. His offense was definitely there. But my question was, can he continue to grow from that? Or did he just have this great rookie season and we're going to see him fall back a little bit? But he really hasn't missed a beat going into this year. He's definitely been a key asset to this Red Sox team. And he's really fun to watch because he can do so many different things out there. And I think it's definitely an under the radar guy that, like you said, not a lot of people talk about as much. And it's interesting when you hear his name being thrown into trade conversations because, if they want to get a high caliber starting pitcher to bring in, they probably are going to have to move an outfielder. And Abreu's value is so high right now. But at the same time, it would be really hard losing a guy like that just because of how much value he does provide both offensively and defensively. Obviously, Alex Bregman is a good choice. I mean, before he got hurt, he was getting the job done offensively for this team. And just everything he provides from a leadership and veteran standpoint has just been a game changer for this Red Sox team. There are a few guys you can put in this conversation. I think, Rafaela even is a guy who could be put in this conversation just in terms of the fact that there have been days where the Red Sox offense has been cold and he's the only one hitting. And I think just from a growth standpoint, I think we've seen more growth from him than we've seen from other offensive players on this team. And just the way that he's been able to approach his at-bats has been able to change the overall dynamic of this offense as a whole. Not as many team strikeouts as of late, which is something that drives me completely nuts, is how many strikeouts they have per game typically, but they've been cutting down on that as of late because the whole offensive approach has changed. And Rafaela is a guy to me who has been able to provide a lot of value, and the fact that he's the 9 hitter is great to see him hitting in the way that he is, because I feel like in the past, when the Red Sox were struggling and didn't make the playoffs, there were times where truly the 6 through 9 hitters all felt like automatic outs. And that was just not a fun time to be in. But now we don't really have that situation because you have a guy like Rafaela who's hitting in the 9 hole and making a point to be one of the most consistent hitters on the team right now. And that is great to have the bottom of the order productivity from him. And also, obviously, the speed that he provides on the base paths after he does hit and after he gets on base is another thing that I think people don't always talk about as much. Is it's nice to have guys with speed in the lineup like Jarren Duran and Cedon. So I think the value that Cedon has provided in the 9 spot has been something to me that's truly been valuable. That should definitely be of note that I would put in that spot.
I agree with you 100%. Now we're just going to go into biggest surprises and biggest letdown from the first half. So my biggest surprise has got to be Carlos Narvaez, because I think coming into this overall season, Carlos Narvaez was number 2 catcher on the depth chart behind Connor Juan. And I think that he had ability, but I did not expect him to not only have the offensive production that he had, but just to pretty much carry the pitching staff. And the way that he calls games, Gabby, has been absolutely tremendous. Like, if you actually get the chance, like, for non-Red Sox fans to kind of see what this guy does, it's tremendous because he's not only just in one spot. He's always just – all these pitches are different spots. And I think that for a catcher to have that quality is absolutely fantastic. And not only that, just the leadership too. I think that the players love him and then Cora loves him. So I think for me, that's the biggest surprise, because I'm like, oh, Carlos Narvaez, he's coming in. Okay. Like, it's all right. It's what it is. I mean, and he's completely, now we're calling him the captain, Section 10's calling him the captain. Like, this is awesome to see. Like, sometimes you just kind of need a guy like that. And he's been kind of like the spark plug times when like the team has needed him. And my biggest letdown is David Hamilton. I'm sorry. Like, I like David Hamilton, from kind of as a person perspective, and I know that of course he can run and he can bunt, but David Hamilton, I'm sorry. Like, you're my biggest letdown. There's really nothing else that I can see in you that has a potential of being on this team for the foreseeable future. And it's what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting the point you bring up about Carlos Narvaez, because he is a guy who the Red Sox can continue to develop too. There's so much potential there. And that's something that's super exciting is after they traded Kyle Teal, the catching situation was a bit of a question mark. There were unknowns there surrounding where do the Red Sox really go from here in terms of the catching duo. And I don't think anybody saw Carlos Narvaez coming. He kind of just comes in and is arguably one of the best players on the team. And that's something that was really needed, I think, because of the fact that they felt like, we traded away this catcher that was going to be our catcher of the future. And so the way that Carlos Narvaez has been able to fill those shoes this year was something that I certainly was not anticipating, but I've been loving every second of what he's been doing. I would say definitely, there's a lot of big surprises from the first half in terms of this Red Sox team. I would say Lucas Giolito for sure is in that conversation as somebody who, has been battling injuries and hadn't pitched a full season in a long time. And didn't even start this season with the Red Sox because he was hurt. I would say that's somebody who has been a big surprise to me in terms of the effectiveness and what he has been able to figure out over the last month plus, because his first couple outings back from the IL, I was like, wow, this could be a long season with Lucas Giolito. But the way he's been able to turn things around, I mean, he's pitching at a different level right now. And that's something that for this rotation is going to be crucial in the second half. And that's something that I definitely did not see coming at all. I thought that he was going to be somebody who would maybe be a back end starter, who would be durable, but I said, okay, let's just get length from him. Hopefully he can be somewhat effective. I did not think he would be pitching at this level. But now I would throw him in a playoff rotation and trust him to be effective. And that's something that I didn't think I would say early on. Obviously, there's still so much time left in the season, so we'll see if that persists with him. But if it does, definitely somebody to me who came at a big surprise in terms of the level that he's pitching at. Because we know that Lucas Giolito in the past has been really dominant, but he kind of lost some of that dominance prior to him battling all these injuries. So I said, he might not be the same pitcher when he comes back. But the level that he's been able to unlock for sure has been something to me that has been notable this season. So letdowns, I mean, David Hamilton is definitely on that list for sure. His offense was just not there. And it was tough because he did provide some value in terms of his speed. And I think the Red Sox liked that in the lineup, but it was just the obvious choice to send him down to AAA. And I'm glad that they chose to send him down over Meyer, because that would have been a huge letdown if they sent Meyer back down. David Hamilton definitely is a great choice. I would say in terms of expectations I had for people that they were not meeting this year, I would definitely say Tanner Houck was up there, because I thought that he was somebody who was going to pitch a lot better than he did. And obviously now he's hurt, so I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and be like, maybe the injury had to do with it. But I was expecting Tanner Houck to be the Red Sox number 2 starter behind Crochet. And that just was not happening. And I think the way that he responds when he comes back from the IL could be a game changer for how the rest of this season goes for the Red Sox. I think the way that Brian Bayo has been able to unlock, some of these new gears that he's been unlocking this year has been something that has been huge for this team. But Tanner Houck, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in the second half when he comes back to really turn things around, because how poorly he was pitching was definitely something that came as a surprise to me, for sure. And I think, he's been able to work at it in Worcester. He's working his way back, and hopefully he's in a lot of better shape when he comes back to be able to be an effective piece of this rotation, because I know going into the season, the Red Sox expected him to be a really solid starter, because when they brought in Crochet and Buehler in their heads, I think with Buehler, it was kind of an experimental, we'll see how he pitches. It's a 1-year deal. But I think they were banking on Tanner Houck being towards the top of that rotation, and that just hasn't happened yet. So I really need that to happen when he comes back. We're going to need him to provide length like they've been getting from some of their other starters. And that could be something that in the second half changes the perspective with this team.
Yeah, I think that Tanner Houck could still be a decent piece. It's just a matter of like a back end guy or just kind of a Miller relief, and not be the expected of being higher up in this rotation. Hitting for the Cycle is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/CGB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. So with the second half, of course, approaching today, you've got the Cubs for 3. You're in Chicago. Then you're at Philly. And then you got the Dodgers. And then, of course, you have the Twins right before the All-Star break. So, of course, Gabby, with the All-Star break coming in 2 weeks, there's a lot of discussion of would the Red Sox be buyers? Would they be not buyers? Would they kind of be in the middle? With that 10-game winning streak that they had right before the All-Star break, do you feel like as of right this point in time, this Red Sox team is buyers? And what are the specific ideal position groups are you looking forward to in the next couple weeks here?
Yeah, these next couple of weeks are really going to determine where the Red Sox are truly at as a team. Like, yes, they're riding a 10-game win streak right now. It's been great. But these tough teams that they have on their schedule between the Cubs, Phillies, and Dodgers, that stretch to me is going to determine what they do at the trade deadline, because you don't want to right now say, yeah, we're buyers because we had this 10-game win streak, and then they go and they drop 8 of their next 10 games against these top teams in the National League. Obviously, I hope that doesn't happen. That would be a nightmare. But I think they need to beat these teams to show that they truly are for real, because again, we talk about the competition that they've had during the 10-game win streak, and yes, it's been a favorable schedule. They went out there and did exactly what they needed to do, which was beat up on those teams. But the question now becomes, can they compete with the best of the best? These are all league leading teams in the National League, and these teams are the real deal, and so they are going to be tested. They have the hardest schedule in baseball in the second half. So it's going to be a grind. But if you look at where they're at right now, it's hard not to say that they're buyers as of this moment in time. Because of the fact that they've been clicking, they're getting healthier now, and they have some key pieces back, and it's hard not to feel like you want to add to that. If they were to be buyers, I definitely think the starting pitching market is the biggest thing they're going to be looking at. I think they definitely need to add another starter to that rotation. Obviously, Joe Ryan is a popular name. The question is going to be, is the package going to be too steep for the Red Sox to be willing to acquire a guy of that caliber? And with the way that Giolito and Bello have been pitching, you don't necessarily need a guy of that caliber. You have to hope that they continue to pitch the way that they are, and there's going to be a gamble with this regardless. But I don't know if the Red Sox would be willing to give up what it would take to get a guy like that. So they might lean more towards maybe the rental starting pitching market and see what's out there, hopefully with not having to give up as much. But I definitely think starting pitching is something they do need to address at the deadline. I also think the first base situation is an interesting thing to talk about, because obviously the platoon of Romy and Abraham Toro has been a lot of fun to watch. Toro is another guy who we haven't really talked about, who I think has been a lot more productive than people thought he was going to be. His bat with this Red Sox team for sure has been good. He kind of has hit a bit of a slump as the last few weeks at the plate. But before that, when he got called up, when Casas got hurt, I don't think anybody expected what we were going to get from him early on there. So that's been fun. I mean, Romy's been good, whether he's playing first base or second base or whatever it may be. He's been key for this team. But I don't know that the Red Sox would be confident riding that platoon into the postseason. I could see them maybe looking to acquire a first baseman at the deadline who can be a more durable, consistent first baseman who can play that position every day more. So that is the other big thing that I could see them looking at when it comes to this deadline, is maybe trying to address that first base situation and find somebody who can play that position consistently, rather than trusting Abraham Toro to, turn things around again and go back to what he was doing in his first couple months, and just riding that platoon wave.
Yeah, I agree 100% in terms of a lot of the plans that you mentioned. So I actually kind of went into detail. If the Red Sox were buyers, from what it kind of sounds like is I think that the Red Sox preferably are going to probably go with the mid-tier type of controllable arm. I don't see them trading for a high rental type of piece unless they had some team control. Joe Ryan, of course, I kind of put like a little bit of like a tier list almost when it comes to kind of what I'm looking at. So I did like kind of like my dreams tier list, realistic guys, and of course the sleeper candidate. So my dream candidates as of right now would be Joe Ryan, Freddie Peralta, and Jacob deGrom, which I think would be absolutely insanity. I don't see it happening though.
Yeah, that would be a steep price to pay, but it would be sick.
Yeah. My realistics, though, so some controllables, as Chris Cotillo from the Boston Globe mentioned in his article the other day. Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Mitch Keller, Seth Lugo, Luis Severino, and heck, maybe a Nathan Eovaldi reunion, potentially. I kind of put Nathan Eovaldi in the reunion because, like, if Texas starts to fall a bit, like, I would not rule out Nathan Eovaldi coming back at all. And then my sleeper pick, who nobody at all is talking about, but I actually went through kind of his numbers, and they're not awful, and it's not a sexy pick at all. Zach Eflin from the Baltimore Orioles. I think is a guy specifically in which he doesn't have a lot of swing and miss stuff, but he barely walks guys, and he's pitched in the division before too, which I think is one thing I think the Red Sox would like to see is maybe some familiarity when it comes to maybe getting a guy like that. So I'm just wondering in terms of for your sake, is there any type of guys that I kind of mentioned to you that maybe a stick down that are kind of more like on the realistic side than we're kind of like dreaming of the other guys?
Yeah, I think Nathan Eovaldi is a really good choice. He's kind of having an under the radar season. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but he's been highly effective this year. And obviously he has experience pitching at Fenway, pitching for the Red Sox. I think that is somebody who they could probably acquire without, depleting their entire farm system. The top tier guys are guys who undoubtedly would make this rotation for sure a playoff rotation. But at the same time, with the Red Sox being very adamant on keeping their future intact and how hard they've worked over the last few seasons to really develop their future and build a strong core for the future, now that that's all finally starting together with some of their young pieces that they have, now everything's kind of coming together in that regard. I don't think they want to destroy any of that. So I don't think they'd want to dig into that tier of players that they feel are going to be part of that future. Obviously, there are guys that could be a pipe dream, like a Paul Skeens type, which would be insane. But
maybe in 2 years.
Huh?
I said maybe in 2 years.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, that'd be an insane trade. And I would be highly shocked if the Red Sox did that. I just see Dodgers written all over it with him. But I think there are definitely some other reasonable guys. I think Charlie Morton is an interesting name as somebody who the Red Sox maybe could look at as well. I see somebody more in that middle tier being the type of pitcher that realistically the Red Sox do acquire, because I know Craig Breslow has talked a lot about controllable pitchers, wanting guys who they can at least have for a couple more years under team control. And so I see them trying to acquire somebody who they feel is under team control for a bit, and won't cost as much, but is still having a good enough season to where they can be effective in this rotation. And I think with the way that, like I mentioned, with Bayo and Giolito and how they've been pitching, I think the Red Sox feel comfortable with proceeding in that way. I think if those guys were struggling a lot, there would be a lot of work that needs to be done with the rotation, but they're hoping that those guys continue to pitch effectively in the second half. And if they do, then they really don't need this high-end starter to couple with Crochet at the top, because that's totally a rotation you can work with. If you sneak another guy in there who is having a good season, but isn't necessarily a top tier guy, so he won't be as expensive, that's more the level of pitcher that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think they're going to go for somebody that is mid-tier. And just kind of ride it out from there. I just don't see them trading for a high-end guy, but I could be wrong. Apparently, Rod Bradfield said also today that they're reaching out to Jose Soriano from
Yep.
the Angels, which I think is a guy, of course, that got rocked at Fenway, but maybe they like their stuff. So I
Yep.
don't know. We'll have to see about that. You talk about first base, and I 100 wholeheartedly agree with you. I really like the Romy and Toro platoon, especially after Tristan Casas going down. I did not expect the platoon going as great as I expected, but I don't see it being a long-term type of solution for this team, especially with Tristan Casas down in the future. I don't know if he's going to be in our plans down in the future, as great as much as I like him. But so a couple of guys that I'm looking at, is guys like Ryan O'Hearn, Josh Naylor, who are both actually free agents after this season, Reese Hoskins, right? So there's a couple of guys that I'm kind of looking at. My dark horse two guys, or guys specifically I don't think that they're going to get, but guys to kind of look out for. Yandy Diaz from the Rays, they're actually kind of looked at for him, and Carlos Santana from the Guardians. I know that, of course, Craig Breslow likes switch hitters, apparently. So I guess he'd be a guy. I just don't know how much of an upgrade that he would be over kind of the guys that we have right now. And then a couple guys that wouldn't really cost the bank, but I think that could be, some pieces that could be your first baseman over kind of better what you have, is Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Bell from the Nationals. So I think, in terms of that list, I really think that they're not going to go out and go crazy at the starting pitching front, but I think that Ryan O'Hearn or Josh Naylor, I think, would be great pieces to have, and it would really help kind of balance that lineup with what the Red Sox are doing really well with right now. So what do you think?
Yeah, the first base market obviously isn't like the best. Like there's no like insane names out there that would probably be available at first base. But I think Josh Naylor is a really good one. He's somebody who I would like to see the Red Sox target, or at least, inquire about what the price would be and what they're kind of looking at. I do think, there are plenty of guys on that list who could be good contributors. It's interesting with the Rays. It really is hard to say right now whether they are going to buy or sell at the deadline, because they're kind of like still in the mix. And again, they're the Tampa Bay Rays. They always somehow are in the mix every single year, and nobody understands how or why. But they are a team that is interesting to watch, because I don't know how available their players would be at the deadline, but obviously you have a team like the Orioles who, okay, yeah, they're going to be sellers at the trade deadline. So that's definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on, but I do like the idea of Naylor. He would be the guy on that list who I think would be really effective in this Red Sox lineup. I think he's a guy who can provide a lot of value offensively and from a defensive standpoint. It's interesting too, because the Red Sox did kind of say that Tristan Casas's timetable is a little bit unknown in terms of specifically when he's going to be ready to come back. So because of that, they do have to keep that in mind too, of what if he's not ready to start the year next year, then how do they address first base kind of at that point too? So that's definitely something to keep in mind as we progress through this process. But I do feel like we do see a move for a first baseman. I think the Red Sox see that as kind of a necessity if they want to make a playoff push this year, because it's really hard to go into the playoffs with a platoon. And again, it's not that Romy and Toro haven't been good. It's just you really do need somebody who's sustainable at that position if you want to be taken seriously in the postseason. So I do think any number of those players, like the Red Sox, I think are going to at least make calls on and see. But I like Josh Naylor. I think he'd be a good fit.
And then we haven't talked about the relieving market, but I did obviously kind of mention, so Comcast Sportsnet Boston actually had an article I read yesterday, and I figured that I'd ask you in terms of a couple of guys that they actually mentioned, 10 guys specifically. Not all of them are kind of household type of names, but of course that they're names that have had either really good first halves or just kind of just been names that they really kind of like. So I also made a tier list for some relievers to potentially look at if you're the Red Sox. You know, of course, the relievers for the Red Sox this year have been fairly decent. But a couple of guys to look out for. So my tier 1 list, so like pipe dreamers, but guys I think I would love, Ryan Helsley and Joan Duran. My tier 2 would be David Bednar, Griffin Jacks. And then my tier 3 would be Tyler Rogers, who actually has the best relieving ERA from the first half from the Giants. Emilio Pagan from the Reds. Steven Matz, who is a lefty. So, of course, the Red Sox might need a guy on the lefty side. Of course, you have Chris Murphy and Brennan Bernardino, but I think that Steven Matz, who has had a pretty good first half, would also be a great fit. Kyle Finnegan, and then Chris Martin. Of course, the Rangers fall out of it. And my dark horse is Sir Anthony Dominguez from the Orioles, because Dominguez, I looked at his numbers yesterday. He walks a lot of guys, but strikes out a lot of guys. So, of course, the swing and miss stuff is what Craig loves. Chris Martin, on the other hand, he does not walk guys. Of course, we saw that last year. Even though he's 0-5, which is crazy, I think that they're just kind of put him in situations where they're tough situations. And I don't know how he's 0-5, but I kind of saw it yesterday. But I just thought there's a couple of names to kind of look at, if they happen to kind of go that route too.
Yeah, the relieving situation is interesting. I don't know how aggressively the Red Sox are going to look into the relief market. I think, they've had a lot of guys who have been pretty solid out of the bullpen. Justin Wilson has been an interesting pitcher to watch this year for the Red Sox, because I know there were definitely hesitations about him going into the season in terms of some of his past numbers, but he's been better in the bullpen than I think a lot of people anticipated. So that's been a nice addition for sure. Jordan Hicks is somebody who I'm really excited to see in the second half. I think he's somebody who could be very effective. I know the Red Sox are hoping that maybe he could be a closer at some point one day, like in the future. Doesn't really obviously need to happen now, because they have Chapman, who, by the way, I don't think they should trade, especially if they, are going to buy at the deadline. If you're buying at the deadline, you don't want to trade your all-star closer. You just don't. Like, if you're going to sell, or you're like unsure, then maybe you try to get some pieces for him. But I think Chapman should be here to stay. And I don't even think they should entertain that idea. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But I think, there's a lot of good relievers that they have. I think if anything, they might explore the middle relief market, because I think their back end of the bullpen is solid. I think, they're high leverage guys. With Justin Slayton's injury, that's definitely been tough, because Alex Torres kind of had to try to navigate using other guys in a role that Justin Slayton normally would be playing. So maybe because of that, maybe they do look a little bit deeper at who's available. But I don't think the Red Sox would do a big trade for a really costly guy out of the pen, because I don't think that they see that as like a huge priority in terms of need right now. But if they do look at the relief market, I definitely could see them maybe looking at somebody who could be a cheaper option, but could still be durable, maybe in lower leverage situations in the pen.
Yeah, and another thing too is like a guy like Kyle Harrison, right? Of course, of course right now is down in Worcester. He might be coming up, and of course, the starting pitching, right? If some guy goes down, of course, or he could kind of be, I feel like with Harrison, he could be a possible swingman, where he can kind of be a starter, kind of not be a starter. So that's kind of another guy too that I'm kind of looking at also to look out for. All right. So one more question before we get into like a little fun game, which is something I kind of, put together, which is couple of questions, and it's really fun. So you're currently also been working down over in Worcester, with the Woo Sox, right? And so of course the big talk coming out of the season was the big three with Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell. So watching them close by, what do you pretty much knew about with these guys that you kind of felt like that they were different, kind of compared to a lot of the Red Sox prospecting pool, and kind of just being overall just there? What's been kind of the latest, down the farm when it comes to some of these minor leaguers, maybe a couple of guys that we don't really know much about, a couple of guys that maybe you're kind of looking at that have not gone up to the big stage. So kind of just your overall experience, of course, working over in Worcester, and just your overall kind of experience with talking with a lot of these guys. I know, of course, you got the chance to, see the Max Scherzer and Tanner Houck game, which I thought was really cool that you got the chance to. So how do you think your experience so far has been over at Polar Park?
Yeah, it's been awesome. Beautiful ballpark there. For those of you who haven't been, I definitely recommend taking the trip there and catching a game. But it's been great. The guys out in Worcester are fantastic. Lots of guys down there who are super nice and fun to talk to. Blaze Jordan specifically is a guy who I'm very excited about from Worcester, a guy who got called up to Worcester once Marcelo Meyer got promoted to the big leagues. And his swing decisions are really far along for where he's at in terms of his career experience. He's going to come with really good plate discipline and really good raw power, and that's something that I really like about him that I'm looking for moving forward. Is he's somebody who hopefully gets his shot. I don't know, because of the fact that the infield situation with the Red Sox kind of makes it difficult right now for him. But if he continues to develop in AAA, he's a guy that I definitely think could be really good in the future. When it comes to that big three there of Anthony, Meyer, and Campbell, my biggest thing with Roman Anthony was that his just baseball awareness was definitely far above where it should be. And that was something that I knew when he was in Worcester, and even Blue Sox manager Chad Tracy talked about it too, was just his plate discipline. And just his swing decisions are something that you don't really see from somebody at his age a lot. And that's something that he's even been able to transfer over to the big leagues so far that we're seeing from him, is he just has this really good sense of plate discipline that you don't always get from a rookie. And that's something that's going to help him find a lot of success. And Marcelo Meyer, I mean, he's just really good both offensively and defensively. He made some really impressive plays in the infield in Worcester. And one thing that I really liked about him in Worcester before he got called up was his adaptability, because the Woo Sox were having him play third base, shortstop, second base, and there were difficulties transitioning from position to position. And I actually asked him a little bit about that, about, if he finds it difficult defensively transitioning from each of those positions. And he talked a little bit about how the footwork is different. And so it's hard sometimes to position himself to make the right play at second base versus third base when you're on the other side of the field. But you couldn't even really tell that it was difficult for him to do that, because he would make that transition so smoothly. And that's why now in the majors, he's been able to transition from playing third base to now playing second base. And not even to mention the fact that shortstop was his main position anyway. He's played a really sound defense at both infield positions that he's played with the Red Sox this year. And I knew that was something that was going to be big for him when he got up to the majors. And then with Christian Campbell, I know obviously he kind of had a bit of a rough go in the majors, started off really hot, had a really good month of April, and then he started to struggle. He definitely has a lot of trouble still with not really swinging at the correct pitches and his timing. I would say his timing is still something that he's trying to work through down in Worcester right now. But there's definitely something really special that Christian Campbell has in his work ethic that I know is going to help him to get back up to the majors like in no time. And he admitted it too. He said, my timing's just off. It's something that I need to work on mechanically before I get called back up to the majors. But it really just feels like he's this close to putting everything together. And the more that I've seen him in Worcester, the more that he's been able to just continue to grow in that area. So he's really good with taking feedback. I know he's somebody who is really coachable, that the people down in Worcester really enjoy working with him because of that. And he's definitely somebody who's going to find success again at the major league level. I just always thought that he wasn't necessarily ready to come up to the majors when he did get called up. And I was really surprised to see that he was on the roster to start the season, because I just felt like he could have used some more work in Worcester, because he didn't really get many at-bats in Worcester last year. So I just felt like he needed more development time there. And now here he is getting that development. And he's definitely not discouraged at all by being back in Worcester, which is good, because I actually spoke with him after he recently got sent back down there. And he said, I'm just focusing on taking everything day by day, trying to do my best to contribute to this team and help, the Woo Sox win games. And everything will just come as it comes. So I really like that attitude about it. Good head on his shoulders for sure. So those guys definitely have a lot of potential in a lot of different areas. And I think they each have aspects of their game that are mature beyond their years and beyond where they should be. And that to me is why they in particular are so special to what the Red Sox do, because you're seeing things from them that you wouldn't normally see, and things that they're not struggling with that you would think somebody in their position would be struggling with. So they just have that raw ability. And that's why the Red Sox were so adamant about keeping them all in the Red Sox system because they're like, these guys are the future. They have so much talent and so much skill in a variety of areas. So I really like a lot of aspects of all three of their game. I think somebody who is notably somebody that could be on the trade market is the password, Jostingson Garcia. He's been having a phenomenal season in AAA. He's somebody who just made the transition really smoothly from AA to AAA this year. And there's just a lot that he provides, especially from an offensive standpoint, that teams are probably going to be really interested in at the deadline. And that could be somebody that the Red Sox have to move in order to get, a pitcher, for example, like what we were talking about. But if he stays in the system, he's going to be somebody who I see wreaking havoc on the big leagues with the Red Sox in the future. But again, from a positional standpoint, there really isn't space right now either for him. So that's why he's a good name to keep an eye on when it comes to the trade market, and somebody who, is going to be on teams' radar for sure. There's also somebody who, has kind of flipped between the majors and AAA, and that's Nick Sogard, who's been kind of called up due to injuries and then has been sent back down. And I will say the maturity that kid shows, because I know it can be discouraging getting called up and knowing, hey, I'm up temporarily and then getting called back down. That can be hard emotionally, but he doesn't really take it that way. It hasn't really slowed him down. He still is hitting really well in Worcester. And that's something that I really like to see, is he's just a genuine hard worker and he just does what the team needs him to do. So from an attitude standpoint, I really like what he provides. And whenever I talk to him, he's always super friendly. He's always, positive. And I think that's super important. For, guys who are in the situation that he's in. So definitely, his attitude is something that I really admire. And then Nate Eaton is another one who people got a little bit of exposure to at the majors, who just has a lot of versatility in his game. He definitely, from a baseball IQ standpoint, could be a little bit better. But he has speed, and he has the offensive skill set to eventually be able to contribute somewhere. I don't necessarily see that being here, but there's a lot of enjoyable aspects of his game from an athleticism standpoint that helps him to succeed. So there's definitely talent down there. It's just a matter of where do they really fit in with this Red Sox organization right now, because it's hard to pinpoint some of these guys really having a role, especially because of the fact that Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer are both in the majors now. And, from a young player standpoint, it's really hard to picture them being able to fit some of these guys in long term. So I think there's a possibility that the Woo Sox roster could look different after the trade deadline. So I'd be interested in kind of seeing how that goes. But there's definitely a lot of fun young talent in AAA right now, and that's been really exciting to experience.
Yeah, another guy too, Von Grissom. Von Grissom's still down there.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know if he'll ever get the chance to come back at all, but always just keep forgetting we had Von Grissom in a trade with Chris Sale, and I wanted to do well. It's just kind of the matter of, well, now Marcel Meyer is up, so I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to kind of come back. Of course, David Hamilton's now down, so that's awesome to see. And but I went to Polar Park once, I think a couple years ago. It's a phenomenal park. And you really just kind of get the chance to just see a lot of the kids that you maybe can see kind of up, like, of course, with the big three. So it's awesome that you kind of get the chance to kind of cover the overall team and just kind of get the ins and outs of that. So really quickly before we conclude this overall interview, is I have 7 questions to ask you. Most of them are Red Sox related, but there are a couple different other ones as well, baseball. So what's your first favorite ever Red Sox memory? It could be just anything in general.
So that 2004 season happened to be only a couple years after I really became a Red Sox fan. When I started watching all these games, and there was just something really special about that. And it was funny because I was still pretty young at that point, and I thought that was just how it was. I was like, do we just is that just what the Red Sox do? So then my expectations got so high, but I think there was something special about being a relatively new Red Sox fan because I was so young and being able to experience something like that. And I remember my first Red Sox jersey was Nomar Garciaparra. So that also was something that my dad had to basically explain to me, the concept of players being traded and how they might not necessarily always be with your favorite team, because, when he was no longer with the Red Sox, it was really upsetting to me that was my first Red Sox jersey and he wasn't with the team anymore. And again, I was like younger than 10 at the time. So like my dad had to basically sit me down and say, listen, like this is kind of how it goes. But so I think that made watching that whole run more fun and more special, because I was upset that Nomar, had to get shipped away, but then watching them win the World Series and the way that they did it made it even more special.
Yeah, 04, of course, you can't beat it. For me, I'm going to go with the 2018 team. I was at college and with a bunch of my buddies who are Sox fans, with one of my other buddies who are a Yank fan. And it was just awesome to see and to celebrate, especially two of the Patriots win the same year also. Yeah. So I'm going to go with 18, but 04, you can't beat us all.
The 18 team never lost ever. It really felt like they just always won. It was so cool.
Yeah, it was pretty much the Celtics of the year that they won the championship. So we've been pretty lucky. All right, so number 2, so your favorite Red Sox player and then your non-favorite Red Sox player.
Like of all time?
No, well, just all time, but just in general as of right now. So like
as of right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, David Ortiz is my favorite Red Sox player ever. Like that's just, I mean, that's like he just meant so much to the Red Sox and like the city,
right?
That like it's just like he truly just loves Boston, and like I think it's like whenever I think of the Boston Red Sox, I just think of him. He's just kind of like the face of the organization. So he's definitely my favorite player, like to ever put on a Red Sox uniform. Least favorite player, oh gosh, there's definitely been some interesting ones. That one's hard.
Well, I didn't say least, but I mean, you could say least if you want.
Oh, I thought you said least favorite.
No, well, I mean, you could if you want to, but was your non-favorite Red Sox player. So like a player that is one of your favorite guys to watch, but not in the Red Sox.
I see what you mean. Okay, so somebody from another team that I really like watching.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Ohtani for sure is up there for me. I just think like having a two-way player in Major League Baseball is like so fascinating and something that we don't really get to see. I wish he played for the Boston Red Sox, but I think the way that he does things, it's like so cool that he's able to be so effective as both a pitcher and a hitter. And that's not really something that we see. So like, I'm trying to soak in every, moment of being able to watch him play, just because I don't know when we're going to see that again.
Yeah. So my favorite Red Sox player of all time, I agree. I'm the David Ortiz guy. I've always been. My current one is Garrett Crochet. I mean, Garrett Crochet is my favorite. Like, I need to get him a jersey at some point because I love him. My non-favorite Red Sox players, so I got 3 guys. Touhey, of course, is one. Mike Trout and Bryce Harper. Those are my 3 favorite guys. I just think that, Bryce Harper is a guy that I would love on the Red Sox. I mean, he just would embody that over organization. He just has that bulldog Philly mentality. I'm just like, man, I love that. And
you just like picture him in a Red Sox uniform. Like when I look at Bryce Harper, I'm like, he would look so natural in a Red Sox uniform.
Oh, I know. And his push-out swing, over the monster. Yeah, I mean,
he just has that type of aura. Like I could see him in a Boston Red Sox uniform.
Yeah, and then Mike Trout. I just feel awful for the guy to stay with the Angels, but the guy's one of the best players when he is healthy. Unfortunately, he's just never healthy. So I love him, and I look out for him a lot when he's out there and playing. All right, number 3, your favorite moment so far in the season for this year.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I think like you could pinpoint to a lot of like this 10-game winning streak as like probably the best part of the season so far, because it really helped to like turn their season around and really like gave them that energy of like, okay, we are still here and we're ready to compete. I would say that Wilyer Abreu historic game was one of my favorite personal moments, because that was just cool to experience. Like, it's not very often where you see a grand slam and an inside the park home run in the same game, let alone like by the same person. So I think that was super cool to experience. That was definitely one of my favorite moments. There was also a game I was at that I really enjoyed this year, which was when Sadon hit that walk-off home run that was like barely a home run that
Oh,
nobody knew it was a home run because it like barely snuck out and I thought it was foul and like everybody in my section thought it was foul and then you like hear the people over by the pesky pole like start screaming and they had like literally like hadn't started playing like Dirty Water yet because they didn't even think it was a home run. And then all of a sudden, like time passes and then they start playing the song because like you realize it was a home run and there was like this delay and everything. That was cool just because I thought that was like funny. And like being at it definitely made me like enjoy that experience. Whenever you're there for a walk-off, I just think that's like the coolest thing ever. And so that was a fun moment for me too.
Yeah, my favorite moment so far this season, one that I was at was the Willier walk-off. But I'm gonna go stay on walk-off. I mean, you talk about the crowd just ready to erupt and just the moment. And I kind of had a feeling. And then the Dave O'Brien call, a lot of people criticize OB for a lot of just his.
No, that was one of the best I've ever heard from him ever.
And so, like, it just gives me goosebumps. Like, I probably had to watch it about 30 times after the whole thing ended because I'm like, did that actually just happen? And, like, to me, that could be, like, a potential, like, turning point of, like, this season being different compared to, like, the past couple. So those are kind of my favorite moments. All right, so number 4, take Fenway out of it. What's your favorite ballpark you've ever visited?
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to visit quite a few now, trying to get to all of them. Over time, as you can see behind me, I have the like the ballpark nap thing next to the big Devers picture. So that's like you cross off, each one when you go to them, and then you write like the date that you went to it. So that's kind of cool. So trying to work my way through all of them. I would say my favorite one that I have visited is Camden Yards. I think there's just so much about that ballpark that's like really cool. Like there's just like it's just an experience unlike anything else, and it's really hard to describe unless you go there. But like their fans are so friendly in Baltimore. Like everybody's in good spirits because they're used to seeing so many bad Orioles teams that like they don't really have the expectation of winning when they go. They're just there and they're so welcoming, like even to opposing fans. And I thought that was so nice. All of the vendors, like it was like super cool because it's like everything in the ballpark is like a big, like it almost feels like you're in like an amusement park for like food, and it's like kind of cool. And like I just really enjoyed the experience there. I've been there twice now. And I really liked it. I think PNC is another one I would say that's up there just because the view from there is gorgeous of like the water and everything. So I would say those are my top two. Camden Yards definitely is at the top though.
Okay, so for me, I'm going with PNC, Wrigley Field, Oriole Park I've never been to, but that's on my bucket list.
Recommend it. Yeah. I've never been to Wrigley, and that's one that I really want to go to soon. I've just heard amazing things. It's like I've heard it's just like a cool place.
It's like a Midwest Fenway, essentially. Of course you have the light rail system, you have like the kind of like Yawkey Way with like all the restaurants. It's like their version of it. It's awesome. Comerica Park is kind of like a sneaky one. I went to when the Red Sox played there. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just kind of cool. I mean, there's nothing really awesome to it, but I like it. And there was another one that popped in my head, but I don't remember the top of my head. So maybe I'll figure it out before we're finished. Your go-to meal at a game?
Oof, chicken tenders and fries.
Yeah, can't beat that.
That's definitely my go-to. But I mean, I will say if I go to another ballpark, like usually I ask Twitter, like, what's the best food to get at this ballpark? Like when I went to Nationals Park, there were some DC people commenting on like what I should get there. So I try to get something that like that park is known for. Like in Philly, I always get a cheesesteak at the game because that's like what they're known for. Right. So definitely if I go to another ballpark outside of Fenway, I definitely try to figure out like what they're known for so I can at least try it. But I'm usually always in the mood for chicken tenders and fries.
Yeah, I agree with you. City Field was my other one I was going to tell you. City Field.
Oh, yeah, I like City too. I like that place. That's a cool one.
The fact that I actually worked at the U.S. Open tennis tournament for 15 days across the street from there, I can look at that park and be like, man, yeah, that's a really fun park to be at.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I like City too. I went there for the first time last year when they played the Red Sox there, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah, really funny story. Actually, when I worked at the U.S. Open last year, the Red Sox were playing the Mets during my tenure of myself working there. So I literally walked across the street from where I was working over to the stadium after one of my shifts, which was really, really fun.
That's fun.
They got great people and great food. All right. Do you prefer a night game or a day game?
Night game for sure.
Okay.
I mean, especially to attend. I like attending night games more. And in terms of watching, I also prefer night games because if they have a day game, like that's fine. But like I miss watching the Red Sox at night when they're playing during the day. And then it always feels like there's so much time before their next game. Like if they have a day game and then they have a night game the next day, it feels like so long until they play again. So I just like the vibes surrounding night games more. And like a walk-off in a night game, like just feels so like electric.
Oh, yeah, it's magical. It really is, especially if you win. All right, this one might be a tough one, but I'm going to ask you. So if you had to say one nice thing about your rival team, which is the Yankees, what would it be?
Nothing. No, I think yeah, I mean they suck. But like I think, like I respect Aaron Judge's game a lot. I think the way that he plays is something that we don't really see from a lot of players. He's having a great season once again. And I like his attitude. He's not really cocky. He kind of just like, it just seems like a really laid back, like good guy. So like I would say that is it.
Okay. I agree with you. I would also say I am jealous of them getting Max Free because Max Free was kind of a guy that I wanted.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
yeah, he's having a good season for them too.
And I have a lot of friends of mine that are Yankee fans, so that's another nice thing I'll have to say.
Yeah, my dad's a Yankees fan, unfortunately. So yeah, so I'm like I have to deal with that. But I will say that makes it fun. Like he and I always going back and forth was always fun. And like I always go to games with him. Like usually he and I go to one Red Sox Yankees game together a year. Like we went to Fenway Father's Day weekend this year together. Like he and I. So I always try to go to one Red Sox Yankees game a year with him. And he actually prefers going to Fenway. He just likes the ballpark better than Yankee Stadium anyway. So we usually try to go at Fenway to a game. But it's a lot of fun in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually at the Masataka Yoshida game where he tied the game up last year, and I was with four of my buddies next to me that were Yankee fans, and they were all cheering. They're going nuts, and I was just kind of sitting there like, all right, home run, next pitch, homer. Everybody just stayed silent.
Yeah, that's so sick. That game was awesome, too.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. When he hit that, I'm like, there's no way that happened. And of course, Sadon had a magical moment in the extra innings, and of course, all my buddies wanted to leave. So I'm like, all right, that was a good moment to have.
That's cool to have that at that game because that one was fun.
Yeah. All right, Gabby. So, of course, I appreciate everything in terms of having your time to come on. If you wanted to ask me, though, one question for the Red Sox this season, it could be anything. What would be one question you might have for me?
That's a good question. Okay, yeah. So, I guess I would say, what is your final record prediction for the Red Sox?
I mean, I'm not going to go with a certain final record, but I think they're going to win in the high 80s. I think
that's reasonable.
I think with given kind of where they are right now, the American League's still really wide open.
It is.
So I don't think there's going to be a massive runaway at all. And I do think, of course, having the ace and having a very good closer who I do think are going to stay. I mean, I think Chapman's going to stick around. I think that, they're going to be probably around the high 80s if I had to say.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning too. I'm thinking of it like 87 or 88 wins, and that should be enough theoretically to get them into the playoffs. So hopefully, as long as they come out strong out of the gate and win today, starting with, then hopefully they'll be good to go.
All right. Well, Gabby, we've had a lot of fun on this interview, and we're obviously hoping that the Red Sox, of course, starting today, have a very good start to the second half of the season. Ryan, if you are listening, my friend, I do hope that the Yankees start to lose.
Me too.
At some point, that'd be great. But I do want to say that Gabby, it was awesome to have you as our first ever guest, and definitely would love to have you on again when you ever get the chance to. But let's go Red Sox, and thank you again for having yourself come on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was awesome. Definitely happy to come on anytime. Go Red Sox. Hopefully they can continue to win.
All right, well, that'll be doing it for Hitting for the Cycle, episode 76. Make sure to follow us on all of our social medias right down here on the ticker bar down below. and we will see you guys next time.